truth is the most convincing story that maps onto reality, and that's why the central narrative is falling apart.
Right now in the United States, people should not be walking around with masks.
We must see the central narrative for the fiction that it is. We are Americans.
While elections are sometimes messy, this was a secure election.
The founders began the fight for human liberty and self-governance, and it's up to us to finish the job.
I'll tell you what, we are in a truth emergency right now.
This is the end game.
It's Thursday, October 31st, 2024, the 1,380th day of dystopia. I'm your moderator, Chris Paul. Let's be reasonable. A warm welcome and hello to all of you listening through a paid subscription at imyourmoderator.substack.com. You can become a paid subscriber for as little as $50 a year or $5 a month. And in doing so, you will get the ad-free experience. You'll be able to participate in the conversation over on Substack, and you'll be invited to the interactive live stream every Wednesday afternoon. And if you can't or you simply don't want to, continue listening to the free version on Substack, a wide variety of podcast platforms, and of course, Rumble. All I ask is that you share it with your friends. You can find the links to the podcast, the writing, the social media, and the merch site in the episode description or by visiting linktree.com/I'mYourModerator. Anyone who understands the roller coaster we've been on these past few years knows we haven't reached the end yet, and there may still be hard times to come. And as we add $1 trillion to the national debt every 100 days, we could be headed for some shaky financial times. If you're like me, you're figuring out how to diversify and make sure some seeds are planted for whatever may come. And that's one of the many reasons I think Bitcoin is part of our future. But it's not only about money. Bitcoin looks to be a critical part of the next generation of technology, communications, energy, verification, and even national defense. I'd encourage everyone to do their research and do it now. And if you're convinced of the likelihood that Bitcoin is an essential part of our future, then you'll need an on-ramp. I recommend River. River empowers you to grow your portfolio without any unwanted surprises and eliminates third-party custodians, putting you in control of your assets. Open an account with no minimum purchase requirement. You can get your Bitcoin journey started with just $1. Visit partner.river.com/reasonable to create your River account today. That's partner.river.com/reasonable. Now, I know that many of you out there understand the need to diversify assets, or maybe you're looking to protect your retirement savings, but you're not quite there yet on Bitcoin, and you feel better about precious metals. I get that too. I think going in multiple directions is wise, and I do that myself. And when it comes to buying precious metals, you want to be working with a good company, and that's why I've partnered with Goldco. Goldco is a 6-time Inc. 5000 winner, 2022 Company of the Year, and they've helped people like you and me place over $2 billion in gold and silver. And I have gotten silver from Goldco. And right now they're offering my supporters up to $10,000 in bonus silver while supplies last. Don't pass this offer up. Go to reasonablegold.com now. This is your opportunity to protect you and your family from an out-of-control government before it's too late. So don't wait a second longer. Take action today. Click on the link in the podcast notes or go to reasonablegold.com now and get your free gold kit, your free IRA kit. You'll be glad you did. So I guess I'll start off by saying happy Halloween, although I'm not sure it's happy for everyone. Last night at the quote-unquote White House, someone dressed as Joe Biden was going around biting babies. He just couldn't stop. I wasn't even there, and I'm scared. Donald Trump attended his rally last night, dressed in a reflective vest after arriving in a garbage truck Vivek Ramaswamy, J.D. Vance's college BFF, went out and did the same stunt for some reason, a garbage truck ride along. I guess he must have needed content for Instagram. But who knows? Maybe he planned his first and Trump copied him. Yesterday on the live stream, we talked a bit about all the instances of election fraud and rigging and manipulation that seem to be popping up all over the country. We had ballots in ballot boxes being burnt in Oregon and Washington. We had Jenna Griswold being forced to admit that election equipment passwords had been freely available on the internet for months at least. And then we had this admission from Michigan Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson. I played it yesterday, but I want to be sure to hit it again for the people who are not paid subscribers.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Why was that only hot in the past few days, and why can't it be fixed? I saw those releases.
Yeah, this is a nationwide issue with Dominion voter access terminals in the counties that use them. And the voter access terminals, of course, not all the machines, just the ones that are accessible, have an issue with the straight party voting and a programming issue that's, again, affected the machines nationwide. And I think all of us that use Dominion machines were unhappy to learn about this during the testing period and as early voting began. So we're working with Dominion to seek accountability on that front, and also are working with our clerks to ensure voters are aware of this programming issue that will require them to ensure they are voting every section on the ballot.
Do you think it's a bigger issue in Michigan because we do allow voters to cross over in ways that a lot of other states don't?
Because we have straight party. It's not struck me as I've talked to my other colleagues in other states. They're just as upset about it as we are. So, yeah, we're surprised. Yeah.
So Jocelyn Benson admits that there's a problem with Dominion machines. It sounds like they've known about it for quite a while. Newsweek covered this morning. The headline, Michigan warns of issue with some Dominion voting machines. The State Department in Michigan is warning that there's a programming issue with some of the machines made by Dominion that will make casting a ballot more inconvenient for some voters. Voters with disabilities and others in the battleground state can use Dominion Voter Assist Terminals, VATs, to help them mark their ballots. People using the machines will have to carefully follow instructions to verify their ballot selections, or they will receive an error message. The error message comes up if a voter selects the straight party option at the start of the process, but then casts their vote for candidates of different parties later on. Although the issue will not stop people from voting or making their preferred selections, and it will not change anyone's votes, it will make the process more inconvenient for some voters using the VATs, the department said. The issue only affects voters in Michigan counties that use equipment from Dominion voting systems, the release said. Each early voting site and polling place in those counties has at least one VAT. Voters using VAT machines will have to either select the straight party option if they wish to vote straight ticket, or vote each race on the partisan selection of the ballot if they wish to split their ticket. While this is the process used in some other states, it is not the standard in Michigan, where voters have the option to vote straight party, but then override their party selection for individual races. If a voter using the Dominion VAT votes straight party, but then splits their ticket, the voter will receive an error message. Dominion said in a statement that the Michigan Department of State, quote, has confirmed there is no issue preventing any voters from voting or making their preferred selections and casting their ballot. Jocelyn Benson said the issue was nationwide, and you heard her comments. Dominion says that Benson's comment about a nationwide issue was, quote, false and misleading. Dominion said they made multiple requests for corrective action from the Michigan Secretary of State's office, and that Dominion has no machines in any other states that offer straight party voting options like the state of Michigan does. This is the sort of thing we can expect to hear about again over the coming weeks and maybe months as the true story of this fake election begins to emerge. Leaving the people aside, The states we've mentioned so far, Washington, Oregon, Colorado, and Michigan, are all communist strongholds as far as the government in each state is concerned. And here's another. This was published on Just the News overnight. Voter confidence rattled after voting machines malfunction across Illinois. Voter confidence has been shaken with voting machines malfunctioning in several Illinois jurisdictions. In McLean County, 34 ballots were placed in what the county clerk, Kathy Michael, called an emergency bin, which is located underneath the voting machine used to tabulate votes. At the Eastland Mall, an early voting location, the machine, quote unquote, glitched for 30 minutes. Affected voter Wayne Henricks called the clerk's office after putting his ballot in the bin and was connected with an assistant county clerk. She indicated that the ballots in the emergency bin, are considered mail-in ballots and they will be counted on Election Day rather than being counted early, said Henricks. McLean County Elections Director Mark Sanger said any ballots placed in the emergency bin will be tabulated after the early voting sites close. Sanger said the ballots were tabulated after they closed on Tuesday, October 22nd. Oh, well, that's good. So the Illinois officials are able to know the score the whole time, just like in other states. We can't know the score, but the people running the elections can know the score. And considering there really isn't a single, quote unquote, elected official in the entire country who can prove his or her own legitimacy, maybe enabling that sort of access to these sorts of people is not the best guarantee of election integrity. The thing that concerned me was, 1, is that really secure? 2, we are voting early for a reason, and that's to bank those votes, said Henricks. Whoops. I guess those people who said we need to bank our votes early just got rug pulled by the system again. Who could see that coming? Oh, I know. No one could see that coming. Such ballots are to be tabulated and witnessed by Democrat and Republican election judges according to state law. In viral social media posts, voters say they walked out of a Schaumburg early voting site after the ballot scanner stopped working. One Schaumburg voter posted a video saying he didn't cast his ballot after election judges told him to put his ballot in a box to be scanned later. Well, so much for early voting. Their scanner's broken, and they said, don't worry, we'll just put it in the box and we'll make sure we scan them all tonight when everyone leaves, the voter said. In another video posted on social media, election judges can be seen addressing a group of about 50 voters. A man wearing what appears to be an election judge badge made an announcement. We have one scanner and the one scanner is broken, the man said. No one is going to open that emergency bin up until tonight, and that's us who take care of it. You know us, you have our badges, said another election judge, and that should make everyone feel totally safe. I mean, sure, we're supposedly choosing who represents us and rules us and governs us and makes the laws we have to follow at the threat of state violence, the confiscation of our property, or imprisonment. But sure, we can trust these people. They have lanyards. McLean County GOP Chair Dennis Grundler was at the Eastland Mall trying to vote early on Tuesday. He said he was told to put his ballot in the emergency bin, and he asked the judges for their names. The election judges didn't give him their names. Darn, I guess the "you have our badges" security technique didn't work. The McLean County Clerk's office said the law states for security purposes, judges now use a letter designation instead of their name. According to the law, judges must initial ballots, and they use their name and initials. Oh, phew, that sounds like a good law. Everything is safe again. Gotta wonder what's up with these blue states, though. Colorado, particularly, they're the state that has the gold standard of elections, led by the thoroughly repulsive Jenna Griswold, who was born in 1986. We have corrupt and incompetent millennial shitlibs running the elections. Let's move to another supposedly blue state. That definitely is not a blue state. Pennsylvania. This is from CNN yesterday. Trump stokes voter fraud fears in Pennsylvania as counties investigate and state urges patience. Former President Donald Trump on Tuesday claimed 2 Pennsylvania counties are experiencing voter fraud, despite both officials there maintaining they're still investigating potential issues related to voter registration applications. See that? Donald Trump is not allowed to point out these issues until the people responsible for these issues have investigated them and then, quote unquote, debunked them and told the country why nothing is actually wrong. Donald Trump highlighting these issues first makes it harder for them to frame what's happening. And if they're not given an ample opportunity to debunk the things that they're actually doing, then that's Trump interfering in the election. A week from Election Day, the former president and the RNC appear to be laying the groundwork to challenge voting results if Trump loses. Well, maybe that's what they're doing, or maybe they're laying the groundwork to prosecute crimes that are happening, or maybe they're laying the groundwork to pursue election integrity through full forensic audits of every part of this ridiculous process. But let's continue. The former president did not wait for the results of the York and Lancaster County investigations before stoking fears on social media about allegedly fraudulent voter registration applications, even as Pennsylvania's Secretary of State asked the public for patience. And in a separate instance, the RNC joined the Trump campaign in pushing claims of voter suppression as election officials in the critical battleground pushed back. So Trump is stoking fear, and these election officials are stoking confidence in the election, whether or not confidence in the election is warranted. And of course, it's not warranted. Why are they so adamantly claiming that nothing is wrong with the elections when everyone can see there is something wrong with the elections? And why is the media biased towards suggesting that everything is fine with the elections when that's clearly not true? And it hasn't been true for years, and it probably hasn't been true ever. Tuesday on Truth Social, Trump said, wow, York County, Pennsylvania received thousands of potentially fraudulent voter registration forms and mail-in ballot applications from a third-party group. This on top of Lancaster County being caught with 2,600 fake ballots and forms, all written by the same person. Really bad, quote unquote, stuff. What is going on in Pennsylvania? Law enforcement must do their job immediately. Wow, he said in all caps. Trump and RNC officials have increasingly floated claims about potential issues with mail-in ballots in Pennsylvania in the lead up to November 5th, as the former president's allies also target mail-in ballots in court. State and county officials, meanwhile, have sought to reassure voters that they are investigating any alleged issues with the mail-in ballot process and that they are seeking to protect the integrity of the election process at this early stage. Pennsylvania Democrat Governor Josh Shapiro told CNN's Caitlin Collins on The Source Tuesday night that the allegations are more of the same from Trump, adding that as the state's attorney general, he defeated 43 challenges to the 2020 vote count from the former president and his allies. I understand that Donald Trump wants to again use the same playbook where he tries to create chaos and stoke division and fear about our system. But again, we will have a free and fair, safe and secure election in Pennsylvania, and the will of the people will be respected and protected. Last week, law enforcement and election officials in Lancaster County announced they had identified incidents of suspected voter registration fraud. The suspected fraud, according to the bipartisan Board of Elections and the county's district attorney, likely stemmed from a large-scale canvassing operation that submitted registration applications with duplicate handwriting and inaccurate or unverifiable addresses. The officials said approximately 2,500 voter registration forms have been contained and segregated to be reviewed and investigated, but did not say how many of those have been found to be fraudulent. While announcing the suspected fraud, Lancaster County officials said at least 2 other counties may have also received fraudulent voter registration applications. On Tuesday, York County spokesperson Greg Monsky would not confirm to CNN whether it had received fraudulent voter registration applications and couldn't speak to any connection with the issues alleged in Lancaster County. In Delaware County, officials are pushing back on earlier claims from the Trump campaign and the RNC that voter suppression occurred after an incident Monday at a local polling site where county officials say a woman was removed because she was disruptive, belligerent, and attempting to influence voters waiting in line. RNC Chair Michael Whatley shared a video of the woman in handcuffs on X claiming that, quote, a supporter of President Trump's was arrested today for encouraging people to stay in the early voting line and cast their ballots freely in Pennsylvania. This is voter suppression from the left. Don't let them turn you away, he wrote. The woman's name is Val Biancaniello. The claim from officials is that she was detained for harassing and intimidating the people waiting in line. She posted on X, they arrested me and I didn't break any laws. I encouraged people to stay in line and vote because the Democrats were discouraging voters from in-person voting in Delaware County. The Delaware County DA says she will be receiving a citation for disorderly conduct. And the article concludes this way. A lack of clarity about the incident in media has not stopped Republican operatives and pro-Trump influencers from seizing on the video and claiming it as an example of voter suppression from the left. Meanwhile, the RNC is continuing its legal battle over Pennsylvania's mail-in ballots and has filed an emergency petition to the Supreme Court. And so let's go quickly to that. This was from Monday. Republicans asked the Supreme Court to step into a fight over provisional ballots in the presidential battleground state of Pennsylvania, bringing a second potentially significant voting case to the high court within days of the election. The RNC urged the justices to block a state court ruling that allows people to vote provisionally when election officials identify problems with their mail-in ballots, specifically when they fail to put them into a secrecy envelope before sending them off in the mail. Those ballots, because they are missing the secrecy sleeve, are referred to as naked ballots. This case is of paramount public importance, potentially affecting tens of thousands of votes in a state which many anticipate could be decisive in control of the U.S. Senate or even the 2024 presidential election, the RNC said in its appeal. The case arrived hours after Virginia asked the Supreme Court to allow the state to continue a program to remove suspected non-citizens from the rolls. The Supreme Court sided with Virginia in that case, allowing them to move forward with the removal of those roughly 1,600 alleged non-citizens from its voter rolls. And let's go back to Pennsylvania for one more. This is the New York Times yesterday. Trump successfully sues to extend mail-in voting in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. Donald Trump's campaign successfully sued election officials in Bucks County on Wednesday, claiming that voters were improperly turned away while they were waiting in long lines for mail-in ballots. Bucks County, a crucial battleground north of Philadelphia, had given voters until 5 p.m. on Tuesday to apply in person at county offices for a mail-in ballot. In the lawsuit, the Trump campaign said that some voters were turned away well before the deadline and left without being able to apply for and cast their ballot. On Wednesday, Judge Jeffrey Trauger of the Bucks County Court of Common Pleas granted the Trump campaign's request to extend the mail-in ballot application deadline. Voters now have until the close of business Friday to apply in person. In Pennsylvania, voters can apply for a mail-in ballot. If deemed eligible to vote, they can fill out and deliver the ballots at the county offices on the same day or return to drop them off on another day. The suit was filed by the RNC and Republican Senate candidate Dave McCormick. The American Civil Liberties Union, which is often on the opposite side of Republican groups on legal challenges to voting procedures, applauded the decision and said it had received similar complaints from voters being turned away from the mail-in ballot lines in Bucks County. Now, as I said yesterday, we have a list of these sorts of issues coming out each day. New problems with the elections all across the country. Problems with access, problems with how the elections are being run, problems with the apparatus itself. And in particular, these machines that absolutely cannot produce a legitimate and verifiable result. Any single one of these issues should absolutely eradicate any confidence that anyone might have in the integrity of these elections. If you are going to hand over your power to someone else, a stranger, and allow that person to make the rules by which you live, if you are going to consent to that arrangement, you should be damn sure that the process by which you do that is perfect. And so should everyone else. We go along with it because we're told, well, we have to have something. And if this is the best way we're going to get that thing that we have to have, then we have to do it this way. And if this way doesn't work, it's still the best we have, which means that we have to consent to it. That is crazy. And the fact that we're being told that we should trust or have to trust something that is obviously untrustworthy should lead us immediately to the understanding that we are being exploited on purpose. But we don't do that because we don't know where else to turn after we do that. There is only the state to protect us. There is only the state to tell us how we're supposed to live. It's like growing into adulthood and refusing to leave home because you don't know how to live on your own. At some point, you just have to figure it out. We don't actually ever know what the future holds. But this current situation is untenable. The election apparatus is broken intentionally to exploit us. We've even reached the moment that we always have in these elections where election results are put up on TV, and then we're told that was just an error. That was just a system test. Oh, good, our system works. And oh, yeah, it says Kamala Harris is going to win 52-47. Donald Trump put out a strong statement today about the election manipulation. He said, "We caught them cheating big in Pennsylvania. Must announce and prosecute now. This is a criminal violation of the law. Stop voter fraud. Check out Kamala's new sleazebag lawyer. We are on them all this time. Who would have ever thought that our country is so corrupt?" And that is the question. I don't think I would have thought it prior to 2020. We all knew it was kind of corrupt. Some people knew how corrupt it was for their whole lives. But for the rest of us who got sucked into the void, it really wasn't that apparent. Now it is. And you have to wonder what Trump means by "we were on them all this time," because most of the people are the same people from 2020. We have waited an awfully long time, but I am interested to see how this will all play out, and still very hopeful. We talked yesterday about how the fake election itself really isn't the ball game for the regime. It's what comes after. As I've said for a long time, I don't even think their goal is to have the television announce that Kamala won. All their plans seem to be geared toward the situation where Donald Trump is reported to have won by a little bit. Not the landslide that would reflect a real election, but just a little bit. A result that would reflect all of the narrative seeding that has been done for the last 2 years. That it's actually a really close race and that our elections are not only real, but that the results can be trusted. And even if there's some problem, it's not a big problem. It would only affect things around the margins. They want us to believe that even if there is fraud and manipulation and rigging and abuse, the election outcome would be close despite that. No matter what, it's a close race because we are a closely divided country. We're basically a 50-50 country. So it's really just a toss-up election. And if Donald Trump wins, they'll immediately set to delegitimizing his win by making their own claims of election malfeasance. And if that doesn't work, as long as they're able to rig the system for advantages in the House, they can deploy the Jamie Raskin strategy and attempt to disqualify Donald Trump through an incorrect reading of the intentionally Constitution reversing 14th Amendment. It seems like they're more than happy to play on that territory. We talked yesterday about how Norm Eisen, the author of Color Revolutions Worldwide, a man who wrote The Democracy Playbook, and a man who, at the Brookings Institution, wrote the white papers that were the basis of the Trump impeachment hoaxes, the sham January 6th committee, all of the Trump indictments and lawsuits. And the list goes on. Now he has a new project called State Democracy Defenders Action. And we went through a piece from truthornews.com by Jeff Carlson and Hans Mankey, laying out their case that this organization was planning the next phases of the color revolution. Norm Eisen from Brookings, which is a leftist globalist institution, joined with the uniparty right, the neoconservative branch of the global regime in America. It's a combination of outright leftists and neoconservative Bolshevik leftists like Bill Kristol. A member of my Telegram chat highlighted this yesterday. This is the first video on the statedemocracydefenders.org website under the anti-autocracy movement. This group held an event, and there is a series of videos on the site from that event. This is from the welcome video, just over 4 minutes in.
These ideas are under threat as we have not seen in modern times, perhaps since the end of Jim Crow, maybe even since the Civil War, threat from within. And you're going to hear today about the nature of that threat. A regime that would, if it took power, utilize the Insurrection Act to target peaceful protesters exercising their First Amendment rights. We know that's a threat because of the promises that have been made in Project 2025.
That is Norm Eisen. Sounds like a totally trustworthy guy. He's claiming that their ideas have not been under threat like this since the Civil War. And I think he means the ideas contained within that secret constitution layered on top of the constitution we think we're following. But that's not why I played this clip. Eisen frames all of that as the threat from within. That's what he just said. And this is from back in August. Trump is a Nazi when he talks about the enemies within, but Norm Eisen can talk about the threat from within, and he's not a Nazi, even though he's working with neoconservatives who just happen to come from the same ideological lineage. It's hard to imagine the overthrow of your country being led by a man like Norm Eisen, but I suppose that's what we get if we believe absolutely everything they show us on television. Eisen's group has a list of 10 ideals that they pretend to be supporting listed on their website. 2 of those ideals are about free expression. They say they believe in civil discourse about our differences and a free press and the First Amendment. But of course, they're also explicitly committed to supporting the censorship regime on social media because they are against misinformation. And naturally, they're not the only ones. This is CNN this morning. Election officials are outmatched by Elon Musk's misinformation machine. Elon Musk's misinformation megaphone has created a huge problem. They write for election officials in key battleground states who told CNN they're struggling to combat the wave of falsehoods coming from the tech billionaire and spreading wildly on his X, formerly Twitter, platform. Election officials in pivotal battleground states, including Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Arizona, have all tried and largely failed to fact-check Musk in real time. At least one has tried passing along personal notes asking he stop spreading baseless claims likely to mislead voters. I've had my friends hand deliver stuff to him, said Stephen Richer, a top election official in Arizona's Maricopa County. We've pulled out more stops than most people have available to try to put accurate information in front of him. It has been successful, said Richer. Michigan's Jocelyn Benson said, the bottom line is it's really disappointing that someone with as many resources and as big of a platform as he clearly has would use those resources and allow that platform to be misused to spread misinformation, when he could help us restore and ensure people have rightly placed faith in our election outcomes, whatever they may be. You got that? So you're just supposed to have faith in the outcome. They don't need to prove the outcome. They don't need an outcome that stands up under intense scrutiny. They just need you to have faith in their elections. And if you don't have faith in their elections, then you're an election denier. Then you are telling the big lie. It's like when we had to trust the experts and trust the science. If you don't do that, then you're a science denier. And you might even be killing grandma. Now, all these people are scientific materialists who don't seem to have any faith in God. What they put their faith in is whatever set of facts is currently being generated by the experts, by the science, by the data, but most importantly, by the organs of the state. Benson has come closest to matching Musk on social media. She pushed back on a claim he made about registered voters in the Wolverine state, accusing Musk of spreading misinformation. Her post, by the measurement posted on X, formerly Twitter, gained more than 33 million views. It still failed to sway Musk, who accused Benson of blatantly lying to the public. Such is the conundrum for officials in key battleground states 6 days before Election Day. They haven't identified how to neuter the misinformation Musk has increasingly amplified to his 200 million followers and allowed to permeate on the X, formerly known as Twitter, platform with little intervention. And you have to be impressed by CNN suggesting that Benson has come closest to countering Musk by having a post with a lot of views. It had a lot of views because Elon Musk highlighted her post to point out that she was blatantly lying to the public. Why is CNN supporting Jocelyn Benson rather than investigating the claims on behalf of the people? It's almost like they're colluding with the government. We'll pick it up a few paragraphs down. Election officials say they are simply outmatched up against Musk's followers and the X algorithm. But is it really the algorithm, commies? Or are there just not that many of you? Election officials, they have a very hard job. Their job is to be election officials, not to be tweeters, said Renee DiResta, an expert in disinformation and an associate research professor at Georgetown University's McCourt School of Public Policy. DiResta, of course, was at the Stanford Internet Observatory and was featured prominently in the Twitter files as a key player in what came to be known as the censorship industrial complex. Apparently, she has found greener pastures from which to attempt to censor the American people. She goes on, if no algorithm is going to boost your content in any way, but is boosting the content of prominent people who are deeply suspicious of elections and tweeting conspiracy theories, you're at a structural disadvantage. And it's funny because this fits neatly in the bullshit leftist framing about how if you are privileged, having that privilege taken away so you're now on equal footing with everyone else actually feels like oppression. That's what Renee DiResta is claiming, but Twitter isn't even a free speech platform, so this goes well beyond that sort of self-victimization. The algorithms still boost their content, and they still have control to a large degree over a number of platforms, as we discussed yesterday, with a report about how the uniparty left establishment has recruited campaign volunteers to manipulate the way content is displayed on sites like Reddit and on X, formerly Twitter. Back to the article. This week, Musk directed his followers to report election irregularities to an election integrity community on X, formerly Twitter. The feed is administered by Musk's America PAC, which is already bolstering Trump's campaign. The feed included some election claims that had already been debunked by state officials. Oh no. State officials are just like experts. They're the authorities. You have to believe them no matter what they say. If they say something's been debunked, then it's been debunked. And if you share that claim because you don't believe their debunking was satisfactory and you think the claim is actually true, well, then you're spreading misinformation because there's someone out there that can call themselves an authority who disagrees with you. The idea being essentially that truth or falsity is determined by the rank of the speaker. Imagine what kind of society would be produced if you spread that ideal throughout the society. Oh, wait, it's one exactly like ours. It's just a staggering situation with him at the helm, said Nina Jankowicz, CEO of the American Sunlight Project, which aims to expose disinformation. I don't know if anything can fact-check him, she said. Nina Jankowicz was that singing lunatic who was placed at the head of the Disinformation Governance Board under DHS. Now, was all of that just an info op? It was such a farce that it's hard to believe any of it could even be real. But she was essentially the censorship czar. No one can fact-check Elon Musk, she says. Well, anybody could fact-check Elon Musk if they want. They can see what Elon Musk says, they can look it up for themselves, and they can decide whether or not they believe Elon Musk was right. And if they believe that he was not right, then they are welcome to refuse to ever repeat the thing Elon Musk said or even say something different than Elon Musk to as many people as they can possibly reach. They are more than welcome to fact check him. The thing is, though, no one is welcome or able or constitutionally allowed to force him to stop saying things that he believes. He's even allowed to say things that he doesn't believe. He's even allowed to say things that'll hurt people's feelings, and he's even allowed to say those things if he happens to be wrong. The funny thing is that these people can't even succeed in an information environment they fully control. But it's not like they have a right to an information environment they can fully control. No one has that right. And the desire to have that right is about the most authoritarian and totalitarian desire I can imagine. Orwell wrote entire books about ideas just like the one she's putting forward. But let's continue because we have to hear the argument on why they should be allowed to have that right. Benson said her strategy of trying to fact-check Musk on X, formerly Twitter, comes with a personal risk. The first time he attacked our election system, I had to take a beat and realize that if I were to respond as I did, ultimately, I'd have to check to make sure my family was safe first. And I'd called my security team and let them know to expect an uptick in threats and all the rest. And that's very real, she told CNN. And okay, no one wants this lady to be receiving real and legitimate threats of violence, but it's not like there's anyone out there forcing her to be a corrupt public official and lie to the people she's meant to be serving under threat of violence. Or wait, maybe there are those kinds of people. She says that doesn't mean we shouldn't try consistently with the truth on our side to make sure the facts get out there. Benson also said her team has attempted to find unique ways to get accurate information about the election out to voters in Michigan by empowering trusted messengers to share it. This week, her office gathered business and labor leaders to brief them on how the state ensures every valid vote is tabulated on election night and beyond. Well, that's interesting. So she's forming public-private partnerships with businesses and unions so that they can propagandize their workers on behalf of the state? That sounds just like fascism. And you have to love that phrase, trusted messengers, these purveyors of information derived directly from the authoritative source. The authoritative source is unable to reach the people directly, so it finds trusted messengers to propagate the slogans. Election officials in Pennsylvania are similarly attempting to fact-check Musk's false claims on X, but acknowledge those efforts are unlikely to stymie the spread of election lies. Elon Musk is a huge problem, one Pennsylvania election official said. The official told CNN the strategy at this point is more about creating a paper trail that various claims have been debunked should they appear in any post-election legal challenges as they did in 2020. So they're going to print out debunkings and then go to court. Skipping ahead. For experts like Jankowicz, who has been criticized by Republicans and was called to testify before Republican House Judiciary Chair Jim Jordan's so-called weaponization of government subcommittee, it's a dark irony that they've been silent on Musk's activism. That's CNN, the most trusted name in news, calling the weaponization of government subcommittee the so-called weaponization of government subcommittee. From CNN's perspective, the government is not weaponized. That could only happen under Donald Trump. It can never happen under uniparty control. More from Nina Jankowicz. What Elon Musk is doing, the campaigning that he's doing, the donations that he is making, the way he has engineered Twitter to be a maelstrom of conservative disinformation is far closer to election interference than any of the allegations that conservatives have made against social media platforms from 2016 to 2022. Now, that is quite bold. Elon Musk relaying his thoughts about what he sees happening in the world and then allowing those claims to be scrutinized by millions of people is a better example of election interference than the government demanding social media platforms ban people like me for saying what we want online. It's worse than banning news outlets for reporting true information that happens to be inconvenient to uniparty candidates, so that false information from 51 former intelligence officials can spread virally in its place. Well, that is nuts. But she's using very specific language, the language of election interference, which seems to be referencing Executive Order 13848, assuming there is some foreign connection that can be made there. And I imagine that there is. And if there isn't, they'll create one. So they're talking about lawsuits in the future. They're talking about election interference. Let's jump to the end. Among Democrats on Capitol Hill, there is concern that social media platforms are wholly unprepared for the deluge of misinformation about voting in the days before and after Election Day. I don't feel I've got a full answer yet from the platforms themselves of what they're going to do to surge capabilities both those last few days pre-election and the few days post-election. Senator Mark Warner, the Virginia Democrat who chairs the Intelligence Committee, told CNN. At a September 18th hearing Warner's committee held on foreign election influence and social media firms, X was conspicuously absent. And we discussed Mark Warner just a couple of months ago and his efforts to censor information claimed to be produced or manipulated somehow by AI. It sounds like they're doing whatever they can to get the gang back together to be able to censor in the post-election period on the premise that there's going to certainly be violence and maybe even another very violent insurrection. We have claims of election fraud, rigging, malfeasance, and other errors coming in left and right from all sides. These stories are absolutely present in the mainstream. People are not just going to believe the weak debunkings. We've got the news organizations publishing the claims of these prominent uniparty election officials who were involved in the fake elections of 2020 and are still involved now. And we have prominent members of the censorship industrial complex and senators worrying about this period and how they're going to get that censorship going so that they are able to control the conversation, while we also have the uniparty campaign apparatus enlisting its own volunteers to manipulate social media platforms, all to create that illusion of legitimacy, which comes by creating the illusion of popularity. Like there exists a majority of Americans that actually support all this nonsense. And not to go on too much of a tangent, but Reuters just told us yesterday that the U.S. has detected the first H5N1 bird flu in a pig in a backyard farm in Oregon. And that means it's extra dangerous because it's jumped species. It could infect humans at any minute. And then all of a sudden, we'll find ourselves right back in the midst of a very deadly pandemic. And then we get this today from our old friend Tedros at the World Health Organization.
More than 14 million children in 2022 did not receive a single dose of vaccine. Working together with partners like Gavi and UNICEF, we aim to halve that number by 2030. But you know the serious challenge that's posed by anti-vaxxers, and I think we need to strategize to really push back, because vaccines work, vaccines affect adults, and we have science, evidence on our side I think it's time to be more aggressive in pushing back on anti-vaxxers. I think they use COVID as an opportunity and, all the havoc they're creating.
Well, how do you push back on anti-vaxxers? Does he want anti-vaxxers shamed, arrested, harassed? Does he want their friends and family and co-workers to be propagandized into going after the anti-vaxxers themselves? And I would assume the answer is yes to all of that, but maybe beyond all of that, he wants us censored. We already saw this in 2020. If the election misinformation isn't enough to get us censored, you layer on a pandemic. You layer on whatever issues are necessary in order to convince people to accept the stripping and the violation of their foundational rights. Is there a very deadly pandemic out there? No, of course there isn't. But that doesn't matter. People have to get vaccinated for something all the time, especially the kids. And if they're not getting vaccinated, sooner or later, everybody's going to die from a very deadly pandemic. So they are creating the potential for harm, and therefore their voices must be silenced one way or another. And this is mere speculation, but the reports of this bird flu and this ridiculous new push against anti-vaxxers might be why Trump transition team co-chair Howard Lutnick went on CNN to say this.
Another person who was on stage recently and was talking about coming into the administration is RFK Jr. He said that Trump has promised him control of the public health agencies, HHS, which would be also, CDC, FDA, USDA, all of these agencies. Is that true? Has Trump promised him basically the HHS job?
So I spent 2.5 hours this week with Bobby Kennedy Jr. And it was the most extraordinary thing because let's face it, we've all heard on the news all sorts of sort of snarky comments about him. And I said, so tell me, how's it going to go? And he said, why don't you just listen to me explain things? And what he explained was when he was born, we had 3 vaccines and autism was 1 in 10,000. Now a baby's born with 76 vaccines because in 1986, they waived product liability for vaccines. And here's the best one. They started paying the people at the NIH, right? They pay them a piece of the money for the vaccine companies. Wait a minute, let me finish. And so all of these vaccines came out without product liability. So what happened now? Autism is 1 in 34.
Okay,
amazing.
Neither of us are doctors. Vaccines are safe. RFK,
Why do you think vaccines are safe? There's no product liability anymore. They're not proven.
Kids get them and they're fine.
Why do you think they're fine?
But because they're proven scientifically to be so.
How about this? There was 1 in 10,000 people with autism. We all know so many more people with autism than had it when we were young. Oh, come on.
Okay,
his point is really interesting.
But
so here's what he
vaccines
said.
don't cause autism, which is what RFK pushes, which is why people are concerned that he could get a job like HHS. And I don't even think he could get...
He's not getting a job for HHS. What he's trying to do, here's what he wants to do. He said, I want data. I just want data because they block the data.
But the data's out there.
Wait, it's not.
They don't block it. You can look at it. It's online.
He wants the data so he can say, these things are unsafe. He says, if you give me the data, all I want is the data, and I'll take on the data and show that it's not safe. And then if you pull the product liability, the companies will yank these vaccines right off of the market. So that's his point. He's not trying to do anything but things that made sense. And look,
this is not where I thought this was going because...
Well, I spent 2.5 hours with
RFK Jr. is a vaccine skeptic. He pushes lies about vaccines. And I don't even think if Republicans...
Why do you think he pushes lies? Why you said, you said I'm not a scientist and you aren't. So he just wants
scientists
data.
say he pushes lies.
But scientists who are paid to say he pushes lies. Let's give him the data. I think it'd be pretty cool to give him the data. Let's see what he comes up with.
Okay.
I think it's pretty fun.
He pushed conspiracies about COVID. He had to apologize for tying vaccine questions to what happened in Germany during the Holocaust.
I promise you, I have not looked at all the things he said.
That anyone's looking at for
he said Roundup. Remember Roundup?
But you're saying he would not be in charge of HHS?
No, of course not.
Okay, so he's not going to be
he's not going to be the secretary. No.
Well, he couldn't get confirmed, but would he be in an acting position or anything like that?
I just told you what he wants. He wants to help get data.
You're saying he wants access to data, but
he just wants data, and he wants to prove things are wrong. And he says, if I can't prove they're wrong, that's fine. But if I can save millions of Americans' lives and make their lives better. And I think that's pretty cool.
I'm not sure
so
any
he's
data.
Just trying to do it.
I don't think any data would back that up.
So we have Howard Lutnick being awesome and Caitlin Collins being her unfortunate self. What an awful job these people have. They have an earpiece in and someone on the other end telling them to cut their guest off with claims about how someone is lying or spreading conspiracy theories or just trying to get rich off making those claims, that the data doesn't support it, vaccines are fine, kids take them, and everything's fine. That is lunacy. And it all comes back to trust the experts, trust the science. Neither of us are doctors, she says, as if you have to be a doctor to understand what's going on. And it's funny because the portrayal of the doctors and the scientists and the experts as infallible is what has caused the public to lose completely whatever faith in them they had, which they shouldn't have had in the first place. Putting faith in science is just as silly as putting faith in our elections, and just as silly as putting faith in doctors or experts. Now, you heard Caitlin Collins there going after RFK Jr., and we just did a piece in CNN about the threat posed by Elon Musk and the fact that he is not going to force X, formerly Twitter, to be a controlled information environment in the way that the Uniparty demands. And all of this seems like a concerted effort because CNN has had as their main article on their front page for nearly a full day now, which is unusual for them. This article, Trump's plan to radically remake government with RFK Jr. and Elon Musk, is coming into view. For much of the presidential campaign, former President Donald Trump worked to distance himself from Project 2025, the detailed game plan written by conservative activists for a second Trump term. And of course, he distances himself from that because it's not his agenda. Whether or not his allies will try to implement portions of the controversial plan if he wins the 2024 election is still a topic of some debate, except on the Trump side of things, where everybody knows that's not the agenda. But there is an equally radical and expansive government reformation plan coming out of Trump's own mouth, in which heterodox figures like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. would be given free rein to, quote unquote, go wild on the health safety system. And Elon Musk would be enabled to, as the tech billionaire said, start from scratch with the federal workforce. And Elon has been pushing that. On Saturday, he said sunlight is the best disinfectant in a quote tweet of a post with this video attached.
Basically, a nonstop live stream of this is what we're doing. This is why we're doing it. Kind of, so it's like so people can like tune in and see real time what's happening. We'll post frequent updates throughout the day. This is what we're doing. Now, we're definitely going to get some sort of antibody. Probably a big antibody reaction from a lot of sides. But I'm just going to be like, look, assuming that President Trump is supportive, that like everyone's taking a haircut here because America's got to live within its means, and we can't be a wastrel. We can't be, we need to be like we need to live. We need to live honestly. Really, this is what it amounts to, and not just spend. We can't spend so much money, and we still can't spend it so poorly. So, but I think it's very important to be transparent and to also explain why things are being done, and then people can object. And this obviously it won't be perfect. Mistakes will be made, and then what matters is really correcting fast for those mistakes. But it's not going to be like some sort of backroom secret thing. It'll be, like as transparent as possible.
So he's saying that in his role as DOGE, Director of Government Efficiency, he wants the American public to be able to observe the process. He's going to live stream everything and make it transparent. And that's a good idea. Perhaps that should be applied across government so that the American people who want to be involved and want to know what's going on and want to be able to hold people accountable can keep themselves fully informed to be able to do that. And by the way, how dystopian is the phrase health safety system? Let's continue. Trump has promised to give Kennedy leeway to remake the way the government health apparatus protects Americans. I'm going to let him go wild on the food. I'm going to let him go wild on the medicines, Trump said during his closing argument rally at Madison Square Garden on Sunday. And that is a silly portrayal of that rally. He's still doing 2 events a day. The whole closing argument rally is a thing the media made up. They write, much of what Kennedy pushes sounds positive. His Make America Healthy Again PAC promises to focus on, quote, prioritizing regenerative agriculture, preserving natural habitats, and eliminating toxins from our food, water, and air. But those ideas are short on specifics, and there are personal issues that would impede anyone else from government service. Kennedy compared vaccine requirements with the Nazi Germany era, claiming Anne Frank was in a better situation. Wait, so you mean he was observing the fact that people were coerced and forced to participate in a medical experiment against their will in violation of the Nuremberg Code? Well, that is exactly what happened. Kennedy was once arrested for heroin possession and has pushed wild conspiracy theories about chemicals in the water making children gay or transgender. Now, I have never looked into that, but something has to be doing it. Kennedy's own health has also been a concern. He once ate so much tuna and perch that he experienced severe brain fog from mercury poisoning, he told the New York Times. In video obtained by CNN, Kennedy told supporters on Monday that Trump had promised to give him sweeping power over multiple agencies if the former president wins the election. The article quotes Kennedy from that video. The key that I think that President Trump has promised me is control of the public health agencies, which are HHS and its sub-agencies, the CDC, the FDA, the NIH, and a few others. And then also the USDA, the Department of Agriculture, which is, key to making America healthy, because we've got to get off seed oils and we've got to get off of pesticide-intensive agriculture. CNN has reached out to the Trump campaign for comment, according to a report by Aaron Pellish. So it's not clear if Trump's go wild is the same as Kennedy's view that he would be given such broad control. Trump has definitely said Kennedy would be included on a panel to investigate the rise in chronic diseases. For what it's worth, Project 2025 suggested a massive overhaul of the health agencies, including splitting up the CDC. But hey, CNN, also for what it's worth, Project 2025 isn't the plan. In fact, we could, and maybe we should, get rid of all those agencies. Trump's plans have been met with alarm in the public health community, not so much for the specific policy proposals Kennedy has communicated as part of his Make America Healthy Again platform, as much as for the key issue he's been leaving out, vaccines, according to CNN's Megan Terrell, who wrote a report on Kennedy's record on health issues. Both Trump and Kennedy have expressed vaccine skepticism, and Kennedy has been a longtime activist pushing debunked theories about vaccines. During the campaign, Kennedy has de-emphasized his views on vaccines, Terrell notes. His push for more natural food does find support among some health experts. And how about that? That sentence right there is a refutation of health experts. Only some health experts support natural food? Then they get to Musk. Musk, the super rich Trump supporter, would be given a much wider portfolio than Kennedy and be charged with a massive downsizing of the federal government. It's even a stickier situation since Musk's many companies, including SpaceX and Tesla, have a profit-motivated interest in business with the government. The U.S. government currently relies on SpaceX, which also owns the satellite internet provider Starlink. Yes, he is a defense contractor, the leading defense contractor, and all of these are Defense Department projects. If there's any doubt that a Musk government role could be a risk for conflict of interest, simply look at the fact that he has said he could be in charge of the Department of Government Efficiency. Doge is the name of Musk's cryptocurrency, an area the Trump family is also keen to enter. Then the article goes into a whole section about how bad Elon Musk is, how he said anti-Semitic things and joked about how women shouldn't vote. And then, of course, last week it was reported that he had talked to Vladimir Putin. In a potential new Trump administration, Musk promises a reinvention of the federal bureaucracy. Let's start from scratch, Musk said at an event in October in Pittsburgh, suggesting a drastic remaking of the federal bureaucracy. Yes, or an elimination. Starting from scratch means you get rid of the whole thing and only add back those good and important and necessary and constitutional parts. CNN's David Goldman looked this month at what Trump and Musk have said about a potential Musk role in government, which would be focused on steep spending cuts. Musk has said he could trim $2 trillion, perhaps with help from artificial intelligence, and rolling back regulations, but he'd do it in a nice way, apparently. Musk has promised a gentle touch, offering generous severance packages to laid-off government workers, while at the same time proposing an assessment system that threatens layoffs to wasteful employees, Goldman wrote. And keep in mind the article we went through either last week or maybe the week before about how people across the federal workforce throughout the administrative state were trying to spend their budgets as quickly as possible to fill the coffers of all their allies and try to cement their programs into place for when they are forced out, which will hopefully be by some magical stroke of genius next week, but might take longer. And to be clear, I'm saying that in a serious way. All the public needs to understand is that Joe Biden is not and never was president, and we have a usurper foreign occupation government that must be removed. As soon as the go signal is given, that can happen. If the people were demanding that happen immediately, it would happen immediately. But the people aren't demanding that because they're too busy groveling and trembling over who the TV will tell us gets to be our next ruler. Back to the article. The problem, according to the former Treasury Secretary Larry Summer, is that there's not $2 trillion to be gained from massive government layoffs. Respectfully, I think it's idiotic, Summers said on Fox News this week. These people think it's like some business, but here's the problem. Only 15% of the federal budget is for payroll. So even if you took all the employees, every single person working for the federal government out, you couldn't save anything like $2 trillion. Hey, Larry, I bet you could. It's not just the people who are going to be cut. Entire agencies and agency budgets will be cut. Defense spending very likely will be cut. Foreign aid will be cut. All sorts of money laundering initiatives will be cut. And of course, considering that the enemy here is in fact the global regime led by the global regime bankers who create from nothing the global regime's fiat currency, currently branded as the American dollar, and all our debt is owed to that enemy, who upon defeat will not be repaid, I'd say there's a lot of savings available. Back to the article. Summers has a point about payroll. The government spent about $271 billion to compensate 2.3 million civilian employees in 2022, according to the Congressional Budget Office. Summers said that to achieve trillions in cuts, Musk would have to look at Social Security and Medicare benefits, something Trump has promised not to do. Yeah, I don't know, Larry. I bet he's going to figure out a way to do it. In fact, I bet he already has. And I'd even bet that plan is already in motion. The article notes that at a campaign event on Monday, House Speaker Mike Johnson replied to a question shouted out by an attendee who said, "No Obamacare?" by affirming no Obamacare. So let's go ahead and wrap this up. This is a good spot to point out that no matter what Trump is promising Kennedy and Musk, and no matter what Johnson hopes to do about health care, the realities of the U.S. government make drastic change hard to achieve. And man, I guess these commies better hope they're right about that. A minority in the Senate, assuming it's larger than 40 senators, could block any attempt to really undo the Affordable Care Act. The Senate is supposed to confirm top officials like cabinet secretaries, although Trump and other presidents found ways around that rule in the Constitution. It's not clear if Kennedy could find the votes to be confirmed as Secretary of Health and Human Services, or if Trump would even nominate him. If Kennedy had a role in the White House, his ability to enact sweeping change would be limited. While presidents have authority over the federal workforce, and Trump was working to reclassify many federal employees to make them easier to fire when he was president, a start-from-scratch scenario would theoretically require congressional approval. Not that we can say with any certainty what would require congressional approval, since, unlike with the detailed Project 2025 plan, there are no specifics to match any of these big ideas, at least not yet. Well, that's nice, CNN. Thank you for admitting that you actually don't have any idea of what the actual agenda is, so you just use Project 2025 as a stand-in, a straw man that you can just relentlessly attack, despite that plan not being the plan and maybe not even being a plan Trump is considering in any way. And it's hard to tell exactly what it is about these people in media at this point. Is the bubble just so impenetrable at this point? Have they still not figured out that something major is changing? This isn't just another 4-year election. In fact, this isn't an election at all. And this isn't some shift from one party to another, or from the traditional uniparty establishment back to Donald Trump from the first term. This is a total paradigm shift in what the government will look like, and that's required because the people's quote-unquote faith in this government system has just about run out. There might be a lot of people clinging to that system, but I would suspect that clinging is coming to an end pretty soon. And I've talked about this a number of times, but I really don't think people put a lot of thought into exactly how much is going to change when the vast majority of Americans understand in a deep and profound way that our elections are not real, they're not legitimate, and the government that's been ruling them has done so without the consent of the governed. The structure that's been put in place was put in place by people who did not have the proper authority to do it. All of that can and must be stripped away. And if they think they're going to populate a House and a Senate with all of these corrupt and illegitimate representatives who have been there for years, some of them for decades, they probably shouldn't hold on to that too tightly, because there is a massive paradigm shift coming. And this reorganization or reformation, or however they want to describe it, is not going to be done on their terms. They have not been able to sell Donald Trump as a dictator or an authoritarian. They're not going to sell that he's violating the Constitution or overthrowing democracy. The people already know who's responsible for doing that. I'll be back tomorrow at the same reasonable time on the same reasonable podcast network. I don't have a network. Masks and lockdowns don't work. They lied to you about a pandemic. And Joe Biden will never be president.
In my mind, that's the end game.
If you're listening for free and would like to support the show, the best way to do that is by signing up for a paid subscription at imyourmoderator.substack.com. You can find the info stream over on Telegram at t.me/veryreasonable. The merch site is cancelcouture.com. And for all my other links, you can visit linktree.com/imyourmoderator. And I'll see you soon. Down on the range.